Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Hince. Anne is an author and a spiritual teacher. And she's here today to talk to us about how she has recovered from grief and loss. So Anne, thank you so much for being with us today. And what did I mess up about your bio? Anything you want to add to it?
You did great. Yeah, I try not to use labels because I want people to know that I'm really just an ordinary person who's done a lot of inner work.
Yes. I want to say all of us people, whether we have a label or not, are ordinary people who suffer, have joy, suffering, grief, loss, the whole gamut. So thank you for being here, though, because I think your story can be really helpful to my audience. My audience is trauma survivors who also have grief and loss. So what about your story, Anne, are you willing to share with us today?
I'm willing to share a lot. Okay. I want people to know how incredibly powerful we are, and that the freedom is on the other side of our trauma. Once we get over it, there's so much more to life than I ever knew was possible. So I think anyone can reach for that and get there if they're willing to do the work.
Okay. Well, go ahead and start sharing your journey.
Okay, so I had a fair amount of trauma in childhood, as I know your audience did. I was born with my right foot up against my right shin. So my first 6 weeks of life was physical therapy. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, I was handed over for adoption into a family that had just suffered a trauma because they had a 2-year-old boy that they had adopted. And then they adopted another little girl. And they kept her for 6 months, doing all those early months things with a new child. And then the birth mother changed her mind and took her back again. And I was the replacement into that family for that loss. So, adoption itself is a trauma that we're not really aware of. It's subconscious trauma more, but that was kind of additional because I don't think my mother really connected, because clearly she would have been afraid that the same thing might happen with me. Right. So then we started when I was 6 months old, and my parents knew that they were going to keep me. We went around the world. We went to Barbados first. My dad worked around the world. And then we went to Sierra Leone in West Africa. And when we were there, we had a house fire. I was the one who woke up in the morning and saw the flames come through the bedroom ceiling. So that was a trauma. And then we went to Hong Kong. And when we were in Hong Kong, I was sent to a boarding school in England, which was a long way away at the age of 9. And I was sent to a boys' boarding school because my brother was there. So I was the first girl boarder at a boys' boarding school for 2 years. Wow. And I was teased mercilessly for 2 years. So that was a really big trauma. Right. And then for my teenage years, both parents became alcoholics. My dad already had anger issues. And, it's funny because my boys say when someone's angry, they'll say, oh, this person was angry. And it's like, I look at them, it's like, no, maybe they're a little frustrated. But my dad used to get so angry, he would seethe, like the spittle would come out of his mouth. He was so angry. So those teenage years were pretty much hell. I shut myself down. I shut myself away from things. I stopped talking almost because there was no point giving my opinion about anything because I was always wrong. Plus my dad had teased me about my voice in my early years, so I didn't really have any confidence about talking. So that was that. And then when I was 19, I woke up one morning and found my mother dead on the bathroom floor. So she had actually died from cancer. We knew she had cancer, but it was a sudden thing. One of the tumors in her throat burst. So that was a big trauma. And I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't know what to do with any of this. I just suppressed it all and just carried on with life because I didn't know there was anything else you could do. Yeah, it's like the water you swim in, the water a fish swims in, right? You can't see it. I didn't know there was anything else. So I just carried on with life. So when I was 21, I moved out to the States and I became a software engineer, I did a lot of dietary changes, trying to kind of fix my physical self because I had a lot of digestive issues, I think, from holding myself tight for so long. And things would help for a little while. I tried positive thinking. That helped for a little while, but then everything reverted back to how it was. So nothing really made a huge shift until something happened in my late 30s, at which point I was a stay-at-home mother with 2 young boys. And I had like a business altercation with a couple of other mothers at school. These were very confident, self-assured women, like authority figures, and they thought I had done something wrong. I didn't think I'd done something wrong, but my mind just started spinning out of control. It just went over and over and over what had happened, and I couldn't let it go. And that's when I realized that maybe something from childhood is still affecting me, and I should look at it, because I realized it felt like how I would react when my dad told me I'd done something wrong.
Right.
Yeah. So
very triggering.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it was around that time frame, a little bit after, I can't remember exactly, but I went to a doctor's appointment, and he was a holistic physician, and he knew me outside of school. He was also a parent of my school. So he knew that I was more stressed than I should be given my situation. And he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what my stress level was. And I said it was an 8. And then he asked me why. And that was the question that made me realize, oh, it's my mom's death, which is now 2 decades earlier, because the tears are still just under the surface.
Right.
So he worked with me with, He worked with me with this technique called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique, and it's also called tapping. So we tapped about my mother's death for about 15 minutes. And I walked away from the appointment being able to tell the story of her death in my mind without the tears there anymore. And for me, that was huge. It was the first time I realized that we keep those memories and those emotions stuck inside of our body, and that we can actually get rid of them, let them go. So for me, that was the start.
That must have been just very eye-opening for you.
It was, but I didn't necessarily believe it at that point, that it wasn't just a one-off. So I went home and I learned how to do the technique, because it was given away by the person who developed it, Gary Craig. It was given away for free. So anyone can go online and learn how to use it. So I did. And I wanted to check it out. And I happened at the time to have a 17-year-old cat at home at the time, and his kidneys were failing, and we were told he needed to have a daily saline shot. So the first time I gave him a shot, my hand was shaking so much. I was so afraid of giving him this shot. So I thought, well, I'm going to test out this technique. So I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat, my fear of giving the shot, and all the memories I had around injections, because I'd had a lot from living all over the world. And the next day when I gave him that injection, the needle just slid right in. All that fear that had been living inside of me had gone. And that was freedom. It felt so freeing to realize that you can just let go of those stored emotions and experience that freedom on the other side.
Beautiful.
So I started using it every day. I started noticing when I was becoming emotional, which in itself is a step, right? Because we tend to get caught up in our emotions. But I was starting to be able to step back and say, okay, yeah, I'm feeling emotional now. I'm feeling frustrated or angry or scared. And I would tap about it right then and allow myself to come back to a more peaceful place. And I noticed that I was actually becoming more peaceful. Things were shifting, and I wanted more of that. So I wrote down every emotional memory, like every trauma, but also the small things from my childhood and my years up till then. There are about, 3 or 4 sheets of paper, and I went through one each night. I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And I found myself just becoming more peaceful. And at one point, I remember opening my kitchen door and saying to myself, this feels like I'm living in a different reality, because those voices in my mind, the one that were criticizing me and judging other people, they had gone quiet. And that's when I realized that those words that I had used over and over again were just my dad's words that I had programmed into myself in childhood. And I was just replaying them. But I couldn't see that until they were gone.
Now that's a pretty powerful story. Like you literally was healing yourself. And
right.
Have you taught other people the technique since it was helpful for you? Like friends, family, other people?
Yeah. Yes. And that was just the first step. So things, things were improving, and I just wanted more. What I realized EFT is doing is it's opening up the subconscious mind and it's expanding our awareness. Now, we use that word awareness a lot in the spiritual realm, but I didn't know what it meant at the beginning, but now I really do know. So I started to become aware of my emotions, right? Because when I started, I wasn't aware. I just suppressed everything so much. I just didn't know how I was feeling. So I started to become aware of my emotions, but then underneath the emotions is a set of physical sensations. And I started to become aware of those. So we use the words for emotions like sadness or anger or frustration, but what we're really describing is how we're holding ourselves, right? Because when we see someone who's angry, we know that without having to hear them because we can see them holding themselves tight in a certain way. So those are physical sensations. And once I became aware of those, I didn't need to use EFT as much. I could have done, but I actually wanted to hold my awareness and my attention on the sensations themselves. Because I was in a group at the time and the guy just said, you don't have to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. And I didn't know what that meant when I started because I didn't know what my feelings were.
Right.
But once I became aware of them, then, okay, I'm going to try and do what he said. I'm going to try and feel my feelings. So I would find those sensations. I would hold my awareness on them and they would shift. They would dissipate. And then I'd bring that thought back to mind again and feel the sensations, hold my awareness on them, and there would be another shift. And I would do it over and over again with the same thought, which is kind of what you're doing with EFT. I'm just now doing it at a deeper level. And eventually all that emotion underneath the thought would have gone. And then the thought is then free. There's no emotions holding it inside. And it's a really interesting thing to experience. So then I would start doing this every night. Instead of doing the tapping for an hour to an hour and a half every night, I would lay on the sofa and I would now work with collective traumas. So I would bring something like 9/11 to mind or Fukushima or something like that. And I would feel all those sensations in my body and allow them to be felt and they would dissipate. And I would do it again and again and again. And at some point during that process, I actually realized I could keep my awareness inside my body after the tension had dissipated, which was really weird. And the only way I can kind of explain it to someone is imagine you have a toothache or a stomach ache. You can pinpoint where that pain is coming from. Yeah. But once the pain has gone, you can't get your mind back inside. You can't feel it inside again. So I found that I could do that. I could keep my awareness inside my body. So I started moving it around. Like, can I feel somewhere else inside? Can I do it again? And I found I could. So I would move it around and I found that I could feel tension inside or no tension. So I'd find a place with tension. I would hold my awareness on it and it would shift. And then I'd do it again and again and again. So now I'm working at a deeper level of the body. And so I just kept doing this and it feels really good to release tension that's been stored in the body for 10, 20, 30 years, right? So it was a fun thing to do and I just kept doing it. Eventually I could put my awareness inside my head. Now that was really eye-opening because there was so much pain and tension in my head. The forces pulling my bones out of alignment were just incredible. And I didn't know I'd been living with that tension for 50 years at that point, but I had no awareness of it. Right. So I now realize so many of us are holding this incredible tension inside of us, but we are just not aware of how it's affecting us.
Right. It affects everything.
Yeah, right. So I started working on this a little bit at a time and releasing this tension and this pain on the inside. And at some point I actually heard and felt something release and I didn't know what it was. It was a little scary.
Imagine.
It sounded and felt like old fabric ripping. And now I know it was an adhesion in the connective tissue or the fascia that was ripping.
Yeah.
So I just kept doing more and more of that once I realized it wasn't hurting me. And over time, I could actually feel the bones in my skull actually release into a more, what I now know is a more aligned position. It was, to me, it was just a more relaxed position. And so I had these x-rays taken last year that show the changes from 2013 to 2021 and show that my eye sockets, those bones have actually relaxed into more alignment. And I didn't know those bones would move. And my jaw was way off to the side. It's now much more centered. And my neck, I've had scoliosis, I believe, from being born with my foot up against my shin. I think my whole body was twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's untwisting now. So my neck is straightening. I've actually grown 1/2 inch as a 55-year-old, which is really kind of fun.
I have never heard a story like this. That is crazy powerful.
Yeah. I'd never heard it either. And that's why I'm sharing my story, because I want other people to know that we can do this. And imagine if we can change our bones, what else we can do.
It's quantum. It's quantum level for sure.
Yeah. All this work, even from the beginning, from the EFT with the tapping to feeling the feelings going on the inside, I believe it's all releasing dis-ease on the inside. Yes. Because I can feel, I can sense, I can see. It's kind of like seeing, sensing on the inside. I can see the tension and the no tension, which is the darkness and the lightness. And when we let go of that tension, underneath is the lightness. It's already light underneath there. So all we need to do is find the darkness, or find our traumas, find our negative beliefs, and do this work, which is actually an acceptance, right? As soon as we accept something fully, whatever it is, that's when the release happens. Right. So that was happening with the words with EFT, right? As soon as I accepted exactly what happened with my mother and let those emotions be okay, they would release. And with the physical sensations, I wasn't trying to change them in any way. I was just trying to feel them and accept them. And that's when the shift would happen. So we spend so much of our life not wanting to look at the dark, not wanting to look at our traumas because we're afraid. But that's really where the freedom is just looking at them. I mean, I got to the point with tapping that I did tap on, I hate myself, because I did feel that. Right? And I didn't do that to begin with, because I didn't even know that that was my thought to begin with.
Because it's so subconscious.
Right. Yeah. But eventually I got there and I tapped for, I don't know, a few hours, 2, 3, 4 hours on that phrase, I hate myself, over a period of days or weeks, I don't remember, to fully accepting it. And once I fully accepted it, okay, I hate myself.
You no longer did.
There's no more, there's no more charge to it. They're just words. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So yeah, it's totally freeing.
I am so happy that you're sharing. So I understand and I know how to do the tapping and have had a lot of training and courses, and I don't know, several books about it as well. So I understand that pretty well. I don't understand as much what the steps that you were doing afterwards. Like, is it like, I understand awareness, but were you using a certain therapy modality? Was it part of meditation? I know I'm trying to put labels on things, and maybe there is no label.
It's trying to understand. Yes. I do not think of it as meditation. I think of meditation more as in your mind, right? In your mind or your imagination, or even outside in the spiritual world. This is very much in the physical body. So I'm in maybe the sensing mind, but not the thinking mind, right? When I'm actually feeling, right? Imagine feeling your right big toe, right? Putting your awareness on your right big toe and feeling what it feels like. As you're feeling it, you're not actually thinking. So there's a difference there. And it's not one that I'm sure that I could have understood before I actually got to the place where I could do it.
Yeah, in my field, we call it body scanning when we bring awareness like that. And we do consider it like a meditative process that's more about the body than the brain.
Right. And there is a meditation, Vipassana meditation, I believe, which is more body scanning. So it is along the lines of that. It's actually feeling it, right? So I would hold my awareness on one place for long enough that it would shift, like one specific place, one pinpointed place, and allow that to release, and then do that over and over and over again. So
you're a very patient person, I'm hearing. That sounds
I was also a software engineer. It's like I like to have a way that it will work, right? And it worked. So yes, I suppose patience I did not have patience when I started. Really, I did not.
So it grew.
Yes.
Or maybe it didn't feel like patience too. Maybe it just felt like you're so tired of how you were feeling that this became a persistent journey to you just persevered until you could figure it out.
Yeah, I really had a will to change. I really, really wanted things to change. Yeah. But I also couldn't do this for very long to begin with because, well, especially when I was doing the laying on the sofa and feeling the feelings, I would fall asleep. I would just fall asleep so quickly. But over time that changed and I became very present and I could focus a lot longer and I could pinpoint much more easily. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the growth. It's part of the expansion.
Okay. Wow. Now, were there any books or journals that you were reading that were helping you with this journey?
And not really. I got to the place that, I hadn't heard anyone else talk about this. So I felt like I was working it out myself. But the one book that helped me at the beginning was Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I loved that book. And I really did think through a lot of what he said. And that definitely helped on my journey. Plus something Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks used to say, she used to say, remember when you wake up in the morning before thoughts arise and how good you feel. I never felt good in the morning, ever. So I would ask myself, well, what is it? What is it she is seeing that I'm clearly not seeing, right? And how can I get to that place? Because I'm not there right now. So there has to be a way from here to there. So, okay, first thing in the morning, let me feel how I feel and see if I can maybe relax myself into a place where I feel a little better. So EFT was certainly part of that journey. But once I was able to feel those sensations, then it wasn't a technique that I knew of. I just call it feeling your feelings, which is such an obvious name, but it's just not as easy to do as you might think.
No,
right. So if I was scanning the body, then I would scan and I'd feel where the most tension was. That would be the place that I would work on. And I would just feel it again and again and again and just allow it to dissipate. So I think probably a lot of times when we're scanning, we might just notice where we're feeling and not do much with it.
Right. Because we don't know sometimes what to do.
I can't hear you.
Oh. What about now? I wonder what happened.
I have a Hey Siri thing up. Can you say something now?
Hello?
There, you're there now.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened.
Huh.
Well, okay. I can't remember where we left off, but
okay. I was saying about scanning the body and
yeah.
I
think you're right that we maybe scan like, oh, okay, I have tension or something hurts here, but then we don't know what to do with that.
Right, right. So it's just feeling it and accepting it, just allowing it to be and not wanting it to change. Now, in the back of our mind, we do want it to change, right? We know that we're doing this so that it will change. But in order to get there, we have to fully accept it. And then it will shift.
Awesome. Beautiful. Okay. So what else about your healing journey, other than the techniques you've talked about so far? Were there any other things, like did you have certain routines or rituals is a new word I'm learning that means our routines are more intentional? Did you have anything else going on that you were trying or exploring?
Not really. I did that intentional tapping at the beginning and the intentional laying on the sofa, but then it became just part of me. So I do it many, many times every day. Whenever I wake up at night, I'm actually noticing the tension in my bones. I'm now working in the tooth roots and the palate and deep inside the bones in my head. So it's just part of me now. But I am seeking deeper healing still, right? So for a long time, I didn't actually watch the news, right? I just wanted to do my own healing work. So I stayed away from extra trauma. But these days, I actually seek out triggers because I want to heal at a deeper level. So I will watch the news. I will become aware of how I feel on the inside. I think a lot of us watch the news and we're not aware that it's affecting us, right? So there's a progression. There's watching it and not being aware. Then maybe when we start to become aware, we stop watching it because we don't want to feel all those emotions inside of us now that we're aware of them. But once we've let those go, I think we can start watching again and then be aware of them and actually heal them as we go along. So my hope is that, if enough people do this, that we can actually change the world.
Yeah. It sounds like you're a natural now at healing.
It's very easy for me to just get inside and release tension. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm releasing my subconscious programming at this point because I think it's stored in the bones.
Yeah. Like I always believed in the phrase, healer, heal thyself. But I think you embody that in a really nice way. And the book that you wrote, is it about your journey with your healing? I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
It is. It's called A Pathway to Insight because I believe this is the original meaning of the word insight. We use it these days in terms of going inside the mind, right? Or outside the mind. I believe that it originally means going inside the body. It's just we don't know anyone these days who's talking about it. So we think of it in terms of the mind. But yeah, so it's the path that I took. It's the steps that I took in detail. And it's what happens along the way, because the body, as it starts to release tension that it's held for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it does some interesting things, right? It's just starting to release, and sometimes it will keep going on its own sometimes.
Very cool. Yeah. And if people want to know more, well, where do people find your book? Is it on Amazon?
It is on Amazon, yes. So you can ask your local bookstore to order it, yes.
Okay.
But I also have a YouTube channel that has a demonstration of EFT, because one of the things with EFT these days, if you're going online to learn how to do it, a lot of people have moved more towards the positive, right? But the power in EFT is in letting go of the stuck emotions, the stuck energy from the past. So we have to do negative. So I have a demo on there of EFT, and I have a demonstration of feeling your feelings. And
good. Tell us the name. Does your YouTube channel have a certain name? How do we find you?
It doesn't. I think just look up my name, Ann Hince.
Ann Hince. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I will also look it up, and I will include the links into the show notes so people can find it a little easier.
Okay, great.
Because I think that will be really helpful for people to look that up.
Yeah. I've also got my website, annhince.com, and the x-rays are like halfway down the first page, the main page there. So you can see the power of this work, right? I think seeing is believing sometimes. So to actually see the changes in the x-rays, it's like, yes, this really does make a huge difference.
Okay, so good. I will put your website and make a note. Please see the x-rays, because I agree. Like, it's so helpful to see, seeing is believing, like you said. There's something else I was going to ask you. It went out of my head, but on your webpage, do you have any, other than people can learn more about your book, do you have any trainings or courses? Like, what else? How else are you able to help people, I should say? Or are you not at that place?
I'm heading towards that place. I want to do some online talks. I would love to talk around the world. So if anyone has any speaking engagements, they're looking for a speaker, I want to be doing that. I want to be sharing this around the world, because, as I said, I don't know anyone else who's talking about this, and yet it's possible. So I want people to know it's possible. I do also have a public Facebook page that I love to share things on. I'm happy to interact with anyone on there too.
And the Facebook page is also, just search your name and they'll find it.
Search Ann Hince Wisdom is what it's under.
Ann Hince Wisdom. Okay. Well, Ann, I am super appreciative that you took time today to come on here and share your inner wisdom. Is really what it is. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Karen.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.